I think there's people who don't understand pets and the relationship that humans can build up with animals and the primacy of that relationship, the bigness of that relationship. And then there's also people who also haven't really experienced death.
Often your pets are your only constant. Often they are the only relationship you have that's not judgmental.
A world without dogs would not be a world worth living in.
Your animals love you unconditionally. They love you when you're in a nasty mood. They love you when you're in a good mood. They don't often get mad at you. They might get mad at you because you left them and went out for 3 hours or something, but they forgive you.
There is a certain bond, there's a certain kind of connection. And as far as people saying it's just a dog, it's never just a dog.
The human-animal bond was recognized in the early 80s, and that was the founding of the Delta Society to celebrate and give credence to the fact that that bond existed. In this day and time, I think it's an accepted relationship among certainly pet professionals and pet healthcare professionals. The degree to which some people experience it and the degree to which some health professionals address it varies quite wildly across the spectrum. And a part of that, I believe, is people's worldviews about other beings in the world. So the hierarchical, traditional view is that man has dominion over the animals. So you are required to be kind and humane and respectful of them, but it is a hierarchical relationship, and you have a responsibility in having dominion over them. The very other opposite of that is just a worldview that encompasses all living beings as more or less equal, even plants. I think the human-animal bond became an entity when people realize that your life is impacted by the loss of an animal who's part of your family.
I rescue animals, and at the moment, I have 3 small dogs and 2 large dogs. They're all rescued, except for one of them. She's 14 years old now. When you rescue dogs, I think there is a deeper bond with that animal because you know what they've been through, the hell they have been through. I get very strongly bonded when the animal has been abused. And when you lose them, it's like losing a child or a spouse, a member of your family. They become members of your family. They become your children.
I grew up with Chihuahuas, which is probably why I don't have one as an adult. And they're not dogs that I can say I ever bonded with. And as an adult, when I did get a dog, I got a really huge dog. She was half Dalmatian and half Black Lab. Her name was Cokie. I remember being in a support group that I used to facilitate, and we were sharing in the support group our experiences of God. And I said, I had this experience this weekend where I was lying on the couch and my dog climbed up on top of me and put her head on my chest and fell asleep. And I said, that felt like I was as close to God as I would ever get, to have such a connection with an animal. And everybody in the group nodded their head. When she died, and I thought back to our relationship, it was so clean. There was no baggage. You know, like when a loved one dies, there's always some baggage there, some, kind of crap that you went through, and maybe you reconciled or resolved it, but there's still stuff. But with a dog, it was clean. She never held anything against me. If I was gone extra long, when I came home, she was wagging and wagging and wagging. It wasn't like, where the hell have you been? And I think the lesson for me there is that they so live in the moment. To lose that unconditional love, it was devastating.
My dog was named Edith, and she was the first pet I ever had. I got her when I was 29. From 29 to 40, those are big years in an individual's life. She really took me from youth to adulthood. I was in awe of her personality. I really was. I mean, I was just, and she very much became a partner for me. And I had this trust in her. I saw the world very differently, though, having her. She shepherded me through these incredibly important times in my life and allowed me to be in places, both physically and metaphysically, where I was allowed to see things. She taught me to be thankful about the world that I live in. And in that sense, I can't think of a stronger, more poignant, more meaningful spirit guide. Because isn't that the essence of a higher being? To allow us to feel grateful to be who we are in the world that we live in. And there's no doubt about it that Edith guided me into myself.
I've been involved with Delta Society and the Human-Animal Bond back in the mid-'80s and into the '90s, so I have a strong background in the Human-Animal Bond and was privileged to be part of their pet loss symposiums for many years and had a very thorough introduction to pet loss issues and the initiation of pet loss support groups. We have very physical relationships with our animals. We touch them, and you don't necessarily have to have physical relationships with people to have them be very satisfying, important relationships. But for the most part, people have physical relationships with their companion animals. What's most different about losing a companion animal is that your daily routine is incredibly impacted. Aside from the emotional feelings you have, animals that live with you or that you're connected to, for the most part, you interact with numerous times on a daily basis, either in just pleasant interaction or caregiving interaction. Ask anybody who has an indoor-outdoor cat how many times they think they open the door in a day for the cat to go in or out.
It's never just a dog or a cat. They're family. They really are. From the moment you pick them out and you bring them home, you love them and you treat them like really your children. Right before we came into the business of the pet cemetery, we lost a cat. It was very devastating. I remember just watching this helpless little being run around and suffering, and it was very painful. And we ended up taking our cat to an emergency clinic where they had to euthanize. It was just a hard, really hard ordeal.
Oh, the grief is horrific. This is a strange thing to say, but when I've lost my animals, I have grieved so hard that I think I would die if I grieved anymore when my children were dead, if something happened to my children. I don't think I could make it. It's very hard when you lose a dog, even an older dog, and you know that you're going to lose them. It's very hard.
But that's the deal that we make when we invite these beings into our lives, where in all likelihood we will outlive them. And I would never sacrifice that relationship because of that decision that ultimately that I had to make, because it makes me more of a human being. But I'll tell you, it's the worst thing I've ever done in my entire life. When I found out that she had cancer, I made a promise to myself that I would publicly cry, that when people asked me how I was doing, that I would be honest and say terrible. And when they wanted to know why, I would explain to them exactly what was going on. And that I would never, ever, ever prevent myself from experiencing the grief.
I think just grappling with the issue of somebody having deep grief over the loss of an animal, just grappling with it, would make somebody see that, other creatures are just as important as we are. If it can call forth such deep feeling and emotion in my friend, there's something to this. There's absolutely something to this. it's not the same as your house burning down and losing everything in a fire. That's a different kind of grief. The grief over the death of an animal, it's very much the same as grief over a child or a friend. When Koki died, the next day I came out here into the backyard and called and called and called her like she was going to come running out of the woods there. You know, I thought if I just called her enough, you know, maybe just one more time, I wanted to see her one more time.
It's just a dog. Well, I mean, you know, okay, it's just a dog. I can't judge people necessarily for not understanding that relationship.
That's just like saying, well, oh, it's just your grandma. It's just your grandpa. It's just the man that you've loved for the last 10 years or 15 years, depending on the age of the animal. It's just the thing you love the most in the world.
Grief has to do with anything you perceive as a loss, which does not have to look like a loss to someone else. Relationships with animals are to be validated and are part of the bigger whole of your relationships with all living beings.
When people come into the cemetery and they have lost someone, this is a really safe environment, a great place where you can just kind of let your emotions go. There are times when people really need to just talk and just to be able to say, I love him, and you know, it's almost like, it's not a justification on their part, but they're validating their pet. They're validating the love they had for their pet.
I'm a firm believer in loss as being one of our greatest teachers as human beings. When we lose things and lose people close to us, and grappling with that loss teaches us so much. And if we can, as human beings, express our humanness by inviting beings into our lives that we specifically know will probably outlive, but we make that commitment anyway, I don't think there's any better expression of humanity than that.